Hello, everybody. I'm Dan Limbach, producer of the Pharma Voice Webcast Network, which includes all of our webinars. I'll be your moderator today. Welcome to today's event entitled Unlocking the Potential of Online Communities, Looking Beyond the Surface, brought to you by Pharma Voice in partnership with our good friends at Health Union. We have an outstanding crowd today with executives from across the industry. Thank you for investing the time to attend. We'll certainly do our very best to make it worth your while. We have a very knowledgeable tandem of experts with us today to help us understand the full potential of online communities and learn what that means for people living with chronic conditions. Let's meet them now. Olivier Chateau is CEO and co-founder of Health Union, where his vision and desire for innovation is a driving force behind its platforms, services, and solutions. During his 10 years in pharmaceutical marketing, Olivier gained experience in consumer marketing, insight creation, and digital technology and analytics, which he leverages along with extensive commercial knowledge of the healthcare market to develop unique opportunities that connect patients, professionals, and industry partners to improve health decisions. Tim Armand, MBA, is president and co-founder of Health Union, where he brings a special combination of humor, focus, and practical leadership that helps all those around him achieve extraordinary results. After an exciting 14-year ride in corporate America, Tim left one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies to return to his roots as an entrepreneur. Tim always brings forward thinking to everything he does, whether launching new products as a marketing lead or navigating through crazy days during the dot-com boom as head of e-business. However, Tim is never one to be blinded by the sizzle or the latest bright, shiny object. One of his favorite sayings is, "Facts are friends," which keeps Tim and Health Union grounded in reality. Tim takes great pride in the fact that Health Union connects communities of real patients and corporate partners to create transparent, win-win solutions. Based on the excellent turnout today, it's clearly an area of interest, and based on our esteemed panel, it promises to be an extremely informative session. I know I'm looking forward to it. Tim is going to start off the presentation, during which we'll have a couple audience polls, so get ready to participate. Immediately after the presentation, we'll have some Q&A and address questions submitted by the audience. Tim, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to getting into a great program. As the native English speaker here, I'm going to be doing most of the presentation, but Olivier will certainly chime in and add color commentary as needed. So what we're going to talk about today is we're really going to discuss some lessons that we've learned and observations from our experience building large-scale health communities. And we're really only beginning to realize the countless opportunities that these communities can offer pharma, hence the iceberg graphic at the beginning. There's quite a bit you can see, but there's so much more beneath the surface. So basically, we're going to discuss how an open community model, and of course we will define an open community model as part of the discussion, but how an open community model makes it easy for partners to reach and engage the right patients, how this model enables patients to build smarter, more effective DTC and DTP programs, and how the model can help leverage rich insights to keep you ahead of the competition. And we'll provide some real examples there, both from clients plus how we have used these insights to drive our own business. So basically, as Dan said, both Olivier and I were marketers at GSK. And we, both from personal and professional experience, because both Olivier and I had health conditions that left us seeking solutions. So we really believe there had to be a better way. So from the point of view, from a patient point of view, as well as from the marketer's point of view, we really believed that Health Union could help people live with challenging health conditions, live better and find more meaningful ways to connect. So we really realized that patients were looking for more than just general health information. The information was available at the time, it's fairly generic and more of what is condition X rather than how to deal with. And also as marketers, we were writing fairly large checks to companies that are now, quite frankly, our competitors. But we were writing these fairly large checks and never really 100% sure that we were involved in a meaningful engagement. So we really saw the opportunity to, for lack of a better metaphor, create a better mousetrap. So our communities actively bring the right people together. So this is the open community model that we were talking about. So we bring people together in the shared experiences of life with a chronic condition. We create dedicated condition-specific platforms that combine highly relevant content and social interactions, provide information, connection, and validation to meet people where they are in the moments that they need it most. So the core concept of our model is to meet people where they are. So that might be our website, that might be Facebook, that might be Instagram, that could be in email, it could be in our forums, it could be on a Facebook page in the discussion section. So we really are trying to engage people in where they feel it's most appropriate, rather than trying to force people into any certain channel or mode of communication. And also then to put people together, to connect them. So what people really want is to learn from shared experience. And then that oftentimes can offer validation. For example, there's some of these conditions that we support have very odd symptoms. And it's very nice sometimes for people to understand, geez, I'm not the only one that goes through this. So there's that validation. And essentially, when you do this, and we provide information and content on a daily basis, meeting people where they are, that it actually has quite a strong effect. So the 5 elements of the model that we'd like to highlight and really put out there that make the open community model unique is essentially 5 components that are all illustrated on the screen here. And first is dedicated condition-specific platforms. So rather than the migraine section of Health Portal, we have migraine.com. And it's important to note at this point, we're going to use a lot of migraine.com examples here, really just to show and to amplify how deep we can go into one condition, but we have multiple conditions, and we'll outline those in a moment too. So we'll talk a lot about migraine.com, but rest assured that's only because we want to just sort of show one example. So obviously, the first component of having a condition-specific URL, migraine.com is the URL. Then we create original content published every day. So we publish for each of our platforms at least one piece of content every day. It's from a patient advocate, expert, sometimes even from the community itself. So you see, sticking with the box on the left, the content that's created on an everyday basis. That is first-person content, helping people, again, connect and engage. Then we create distinct shareable imagery. If you see what you will not see on any health union site is the typical stock art, Getty images. So for migraine, a woman in her mid-30s holding her head in pain. We don't have that kind of imagery. We have an in-house UX or user experience team that creates imagery that is inspired by patient perspective. And the imagery tells the story of, it's like a visual headline. So that's the second element. That's the third element. The fourth is then we share this content on social media. So each one of our platforms has an accompanying Facebook page. So we take, if you see in this example here, the calling all those without migraine is an article on our site, but it's also a post on our Facebook page. And then that brings us, that's also part of the fourth element, is the interaction that occurs. So we post things, people comment, our team of moderators comment back, and that keeps the conversation going and ultimately builds a relationship. And the last element is looking at, we do an in America in-depth survey for each condition that we support. In this case, you can see the longitudinal data of how we've gathered things how things have changed over time. And we use this in America data to not only provide content to our communities, but also to drive insights about these communities for ourselves and our clients.
And I think it's important to notice that by design, the model by which we create these open communities being condition-specific attracts people who are highly engaged, who are looking or seeking for solution or information. We often make the metaphor that you don't come to migraine.com to check the weather, but rather to actually learn, get informed, or take actions, and we'll show you some example of that. But I think it's something that is fundamentally different, is that By being open and by being content-driven, we attract people for whom that condition, and you can see the list of the condition in the next slide that we cover, are coming here because that condition is the one that has a primary impact on their life. And I think this is what makes an open community model extremely unique, is that you ultimately attract people who are highly engaged, but also highly impacted by their condition to come together at a pretty significant scale. So, Tim.
Thanks, Olivier. And to further emphasize that point, by the time someone clicks through to our website, they've already seen an image that they found interesting, they read a headline, they read the blurb, and then they click through to the website. So they're sort of qualifying along the way to be predisposed to be interested in these communities. So these safe spaces evolve social interactions into meaningful health conversations and across. So we really sort of look at the world in 4 big buckets: neurodegenerative and genetic, where we have Alzheimer's. We will have Alzheimer's next year and cystic fibrosis next year. We currently have Parkinson's disease. And then we have a whole platform of oncology, advanced breast cancer coming next year, but now we have bladder cancer, blood cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, skin cancer in the oncology space. And we'll talk a little bit about blood cancer in a few slides. Then we have the immunology, atopic dermatitis, ankylosing spondylitis is coming next year, inflammatory bowel disease, multiple sclerosis, plaque psoriasis, psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and also coming next year, SLE lupus. Then in the general medicine, asthma.net, macular degeneration coming next year, COPD, endometriosis, hepatitis C, irritable bowel syndrome, migraine, and type 2 diabetes in the general medicine categories. So we tend to pick communities to support that are chronic in nature, that are characterized by ebbs and flows in the disease process, that have a high degree of impact on people's lives, and that for which there's no easy solution. All of those things tend to lead to communities of patients where they're seeking solutions and they're wanting to connect with one another.
We're getting the audience involved here. We'd like to know, when asking health-related questions online, who are patients most hoping to receive answers and input from? Do you think it's doctors, other healthcare professionals such as nurses, other patients, pharmaceutical companies and manufacturers, or other caregivers? So just click the circle next to the answer that you think is correct, and we'll give you a little bit of time to get your answer in. Okay, I'm going to say last call, and let's close the poll and share the results with the audience. So obviously, other patients was the biggest one, followed pretty closely by doctors. Pharmaceutical companies and manufacturers didn't get any love. What do you guys think of the results of this poll?
Well, that's interesting. In terms of picking the winner, it shows the astute nature of our audience. And so this data that I'm about to go over came from a survey we did of 2,200 patients and asked them this question. In that survey, 87% were seeking information from other patients. Keep in mind, in the data that we're showing here, this was a select all that apply. So that's why they won't sum to 100, where in this case it sums to 100. But so the answer is overwhelmingly other patients. 46% were seeking information from doctors or other healthcare professionals. So that's almost exactly right, 46%, if you look at 36 and 9 together. But pharmaceutical companies need some love, because 16% of patients do want to get information from pharmaceutical companies. And this is something that we often tell clients when we engage in this discussion, is that people do want to hear from pharmaceutical companies. They want to know, because nobody knows more about that product than the pharmaceutical company. They just want to hear from the pharmaceutical company in a transparent way, so they know that they're dealing with a pharmaceutical company, so they can, it's just important to know where any given piece of information is coming from. So people, 0% is not correct. And again, I think, when we first launched Migraine.com, coming from a pharma background, we were quite keen on getting key opinion leaders and doctors involved, which we did. And it turned out they were fine, their content was fine, but patients were absolutely more interested in hearing from other patients. And the general feedback was, I already have a doctor, I know what he or she is going to say. I want to hear how other people deal with these, weird symptoms and day-to-day life and interacting, trying to explain to other people what it's like to have this condition. So again, people are seeking input from other patients because nobody understands the pain, fatigue, and frustration of having a chronic health condition better than someone who has it, right? So our community model is designed to serve this need, bringing people with shared health experience together at large scale. And we'll sort of put some definitions around that. So, across all of our platforms, we reach about 10 million people monthly, or over 10 million people monthly. We create, supporting these communities, 4,000 plus unique pieces of content every year, coming from 300 plus contributors, each of whom either has the condition or cares for someone with the condition or is an expert professionally as it relates to the condition. We engage, though, and this was one of the frustrations that led Olivier and I to found Health Union, was the inability from a pharma point of view, and keeping in mind with very good reason as it relates to regulations, to really truly engage with people. So we have over 500,000 conversations each year, which are moderated by 175 moderators that we have, again, many of whom have the condition or they're a healthcare professional or they're one of our professional moderators. So then we move on to, we collect survey responses, 34,000 plus survey responses. Again, these are 3.4 million data points because our In Americas are very in-depth, sort of, for lack of a better word, ATU-like market surveys. And we've been doing, in some cases, been doing them for 6-7 years, and we do them annually. We also do collect a lot of data about all the content that we produce, about all the visitors to our websites. So there is more data that we collect beyond the survey responses, but this was one of the things we wanted to look at. And then we measure. So 85% of our audiences are actually living with the condition. As Olivier mentioned earlier, nobody comes to migraine.com to check the weather. So when we measure this via our own site intercept surveys, which we do annually, we find that 85% of the people coming to our sites are actually living with the condition. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, we've only begun to scratch the surface of the opportunities of this kind of open community for industry. There are countless ways pharma can partner with our online communities to reach and engage the right patients, to deeply understand their experiences, bringing smarter, more effective programs today, and gaining competitive advantage in the future. So they really break down, I want to highlight a few examples of pharma partnerships, and they kind of break down into 3 different categories, and it's integrating qualitative and quantitative insights to understand wants and needs, creating relevance by associating brands with specific content, and then even to participating directly in the conversation. So we'll jump into some examples. This is an eye chart, freely admit, but this is this is a content heat map, and we're going to dive into what it means. But it basically explains a way that we help us shape a brand's content strategy by understanding what type of people engage with passively and actively, and why. So basically, along the upper axis, the x-axis is active level of interest. So this is people liking, commenting, sharing, and this essentially articulates how people see themselves. And the passive interest, basically, readership of the article indicates what people are interested in. And again, I'm not expecting anyone to fully absorb this. We just want to show the nature of it. All of each individual dot on the scatter plot is a piece of content that we created over a period of time. So it lays out how basically the types of content that we're creating resonates with people, both in terms of how they see themselves and then what they're interested in. So continuing to dig deeper, so it's a big chart, but basically continuing to dig deeper through this, it uncovers actionable insights. So further analysis of that scatter plot helped us understand the different dimensions of migraine stigma. So for those of you not in migraine, there is a lot of stigma associated. Migraine is often viewed as it's not that serious, it's just a headache, it's all in your head, just take an aspirin. So there's a lot of stigma involved. So basically, we uncovered for this partner that themes related to stigma are omnipresent, and that a diverse content planning strategy, which of course we can't go into because it's proprietary work for a client, but basically helping people understand how to talk, how and when and at what points to talk to people about migraine stigma was the output of that type of work. So moving on to the next example of leveraging relevant content for brand consideration. So again, in the migraine space, there is a new class of drug abbreviated as CGRPs, and we have a special section on migraine.com about CGRPs because that is of interest to the audience. And if you look at the three examples, CGRP 5 essentials, what role would CGRP play in a treatment, and questions for your doctor sort of indicate the path that a patient might take from awareness to information gathering to preparation to take action. And in this case, the same advertiser is associated with all of the content, so they're basically there at every step of the way, being in the right place at the right time for the contextual relevance as the patient goes through the journey to learning about it, to deciding to talk to their doctor about it. And that is the idea of having your brand associated with that journey in, of course, a compliant and transparent way is basically what we mean when we're talking about relevant context for brand consideration. Onward and upward. There's also opportunities for direct participation. So in this case, as we mentioned earlier, being transparent is very important to us. So in this case, it was from a sponsor, so the headline says sponsored right off the bat. But basically, this was a prompt for social. The client was looking to get some insight about how, real world insight about how patients struggle with this condition. Now, most opportunities for direct participation are unbranded for reasons of concern about reporting AEs and monitoring. It's not a requirement on our end, but it's typically the way most of these direct participations have gone down the path of unbranded, I think for fairly obvious reasons. But so these are just some examples of some of the insights that they were, just real words. It's people explaining and articulating the struggles that they go with in their own words that really just help the client understand and create messaging around this, and to really just to improve their understanding of what it's like to suffer from this particular condition. So we do want to do another poll right now about the average engagement rate per post on Facebook. Now, engagement is defined as like, click, share. And so the engagement rate is if 100 people see a piece of content, how many of them like, click, or share that content on a percentage basis.
And I think this one's going to be a little trickier for our audience than that first one. So if I'm doing my math properly, then for every 10,000 views, we're looking at 5, 12, 17, or 27 engagements. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, let's say last call, and we'll close it and share the results. So this one isn't quite as cut and dried. It looks like 0.12% got the most votes. Is that answer correct?
It is not, but our second most voted upon answer is in 0.17%. So that is per Facebook. So this data comes from Facebook. The average across all industries, the engagement rate for health and beauty is actually even lower at 0.14, and that's as close as they get to this particular category. So that it indicates that, to your point, for 10,000 views, 17 people will like, comment, or share on average. However, for health union Facebook communities, our average is 7.5%, not 0.75, but 7.5%. And this speaks to the relevance of the content that we're creating. Now, when we first started Health Union in 2010, Facebook pages didn't even exist. And I remember Olivier and I going to conferences where people were saying things like, people will not engage with their health on Facebook. because it's associated with their real name, their identity, their friends and family can see it, and that's all true. But nonetheless, when you provide people with relevant content and then the engagement support of it, of answering questions and commenting back and forth, they actually will comment, like, share at a very high rate vis-a-vis. That's roughly 42 times the average. The 7.5 is roughly 42 times 17.17%. The range across our communities is 4 to 11%. So even the lowest is still very, very high from an engagement perspective. And yes, that's a wonderful thing for us to talk about, but what it speaks to the relevance of the content, and it also demonstrates that we can build and maintain audiences via social media organically. There's also a lot of noise that you might hear that, you know, Facebook and social is all pay to play, which it is in many cases, but we generate the vast majority of our Facebook traffic, and social traffic is organic. So there's, you know, it all comes down to, if you create relevant content, the high degree of regularity from people that are relatable, you can improve engagement.
Yeah, and on that topic, we got recently asked by the press and others that in the light of the latest data breach on Facebook, if we had seen dramatic changes. And so we pulled some data from across our communities, and we noted that in 2018, post Cambridge Analytica, engagement rate across all of our health platform have increased 5%. And, you know, it might seem like a small numbers, but engagement defined as like, share, commenting, it's actually quite impressive. And the growth of our platform from a reach standpoint has increased 65%, which really for us underlines the fact that if we're relevant and if we provide support, information, and a way for people to connect that is deeply, deeply personal, we can still drive dramatic amount of success. So, you know, I thought it was interesting to kind of share with you the fact that in a more than ever data, you know, this is almost the single most important thing we have to do, since we're in a relationship trust business, that trust needs to be maintained at all times, that we keep seeing level of engagement and level of reach keep increasing. So just wanted to share some of the information.
Excellent.
Thanks, Olivier.
Let's hide the results here, and you can continue.
So basically, the benefit and the value to pharma in particular is that we do the work to keep the conversation going so you don't have to. Basically, we support these communities. We don't build any community for any client. Sometimes that's a misperception that people will have, oh, you build XYZ community for ABC client, and it's absolutely not the case. We build the communities based on that community need. Now, we do look to make sure that there's commercial opportunity to go along with the community need. We're not completely insane, but we, you know, where we see an intersection of community need and commercial opportunity, and obviously URL availability, we will. Those are the markets that we pursue. So we support each and every community the same, whether there's 1 client, 0 clients, 10 clients, it's irrelevant. But we're keeping this conversation going all day, every day, with or without a client in condition X, Y, or Z. Because if we wait till there is a client in condition X, Y, or Z, then it loses the whole organic and transparent and nature of it. So we're here all day, every day, creating content, moderating content, keeping it going, and building a relationship with people. And then the idea is we basically give our business partners transparent access to those relationships to solve business problems. I'm going to go into some examples for insights. And in these cases, actually going to use our own, what we've learned and done, some insights to give an example of how this can work. Again, because we need to protect the anonymity and privacy of clients, the paying clients that we do work for, whose competitors could very well be on the phone. So we'll look at examples from our own world. Looking at, so discovering patient perspectives and how they drive business decisions. So the first example we'll give is blood cancer. So we actually own a bunch of URLs, leukemia, AML, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a bunch of them. But prior to launch, we conduct a qualitative assessment for each community that we go into. We, with our pharma background, we essentially treat each new condition as a product launch, where we'll do a strategic plan in advance. So we conducted, this assessment of online patients, basically revealing more similarities than differences between various blood cancer types of patients, and basically leading us to develop a single platform. Now, within the platform, there are sections for the various different subtypes of blood cancer, but that's an area where we really thought we were going to go down the path of creating multiple standalone platforms, but the community had more in common and more interest in sharing and learning from each other than the distinctions between various types of blood cancer. So while we do address them individually, editorially, in terms of they're all under one platform, so that's an example of, learning, doing what we say and not what we do, etc. So in the next one, very similarly, inflammatory bowel disease. This was initially Crohn'sDisease.com, but we also learned quickly that the ulcerative colitis community was going to be very active and very interested in participating in that. So we essentially acquired the URL, inflammatory bowel disease, and transitioned Crohn's into IBD to treat both Crohn's and ulcerative colitis together as a whole. So that's another example. We have, types of client examples that I can, sort of give around, certain types of words that people want to use to describe a condition, and we can float it out there and get people's perceptions to it, and maybe steer people away from trying to redefine a category in a way that patients don't like. Similarly, psoriatic arthritis. Oftentimes, we're finding the community beginning to refer to psoriatic arthritis as psoriatic disease. So we're, trying to be mindful of that in our editorial approach, is to use the language that is most appropriate for patients, because the arthritis sort of lumps them in with rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis, which is medically accurate. Psoriatic arthritis is psoriatic arthritis, but the use of the terminology is something that we've noticed and something that we're starting to take heed of. So the next example, following trends to help anticipate relevant needs. So we have multiple communities, as we've discussed, none of which are in mental health, but in our In America surveys, we ask each different patient group about comorbidities, and mental health, particularly depression, anxiety, are pretty rampant across all our communities. It stands to reason, given that, again, I mentioned that the types of conditions that we support are those that are high impact on people, that could lead to depression, anxiety, etc. So we did two things. One was we actually conducted a Mental Health in America survey to really get at uncover the needs, and then each one of our communities now has basically an emotional effects or mental health center. So this helped us, again, maintaining that relevance, because this was a component of these individual conditions that was important to people. So we oftentimes allow the community to drive our approach.
I do think it's important for the audience to know and understand that when we conduct surveys for Health Unions such as in America or Mental Health in America surveys, we do not pay people to participate. There are no incentives, and there are two reasons for this. Number one, we don't want the incentive to become and bring a bias to the respondent. And then the second is, it's a measure of growth to our communities to see from year in to year out that we continue to see more people willing to share their experiences as our communities and our ecosystem get bigger and bigger. We have now some ecosystem in migraine and multiple sclerosis and others where we have well over 3, 4, 5,000 people that will sometimes take our surveys for free. And it's really, really important to us because they are representative of those engaged patients that will give us, sometimes a point of view of what really is to live or to struggle with these conditions.
So the keys to this slide and this message actually comes from our Chief Community Officer, and we take great pride in having a Chief Community Officer, and also the fact that our community development team is the largest team in our company from a headcount perspective. But their mantra is to make things people want rather than making people want things. So the keys to our success for building online communities have been focusing on serving the needs of the people, not really our needs or industry needs, other than they relate to transparent access as we've discussed. To embrace open dialogue, many of the conditions that we support, there are robust communities on Facebook and elsewhere, but they're closed or member-only type of communities. So we are very committed to the idea of open communities. So we embrace the open dialogue and we encourage it. And to pay attention to patient perspective, people will tell you what they want, and they can tell you, our potential clients and industry partners, what they want as well. So we focus on listening and learning, and we try to the best of our ability to make the things people want rather than to try to make people want things. And then, we really have numerous examples of how our communities can be an important tool for pharma partners to drive uptake and learn from the community. We really talk about our core value proposition to industry being twofold. One is impact and one is insight. And impact is almost like making people want things, but getting the community to act. And then the second is listening and learning to the community to drive better business decisions. So that is the end of our prepared remarks.
So it is time for our Q&A session, and this is always a popular segment of our seminars. We already have some outstanding questions sent in from the attendees, so let's get to it. Cheryl Makopoulos at Health Union is going to be moderating the Q&A and selecting questions from those submitted by our attendees. Take it away, Cheryl.
Thank you, Dan. The first question that came in was, this was back when you were talking about the partner opportunity to directly participate in the conversation. We talked about the engagement polls. The question is, do you make branded posts, e.g. where the brand is visible in the Facebook post, and does that change your engagement level?
So I don't think we actually have done an actual branded post. But what we have done is we have done a Facebook unbranded post that leads to, all of them lead to an article on our platform, where basically it's a sponsored article where you can have literally the opportunity to develop further. And on those articles, we have worked on both branded and unbranded articles. And, we've lived and through legal, countless hours. I'm scared to recall them, and I am still totally understandable of all of those times. But we have built ways so that your brand can be present at that time. But I think that I would have to go back, but I'm almost positive that we have not done branded Facebook posts, but we might have.
It's worth noting that that's a client decision.
Yeah, it is a client.
Because what we won't do is turn off comments. So the bigger concern, and again, we're well aware, is who's going to moderate these comments? What if we get an AE? How do we handle on-label, off-label? So it's not a prohibition on our end, but and again, an obvious and fair concern, because what we will not do is disable comments.
I do think it's important to notice that the engagement level that we see on those posts is about the same as the one that we see on our regular posts, so there's actually no difference. Basically, if you think of our model as relationship and trust model. In some ways, by partnering with us, you're partnering with that equity and that brand and that trust that we actually built with people. And therefore, when we let you, participate directly with them, they're embracing it. And I think that's also something very, very important. So we don't see differences on the level of engagement, either passive or active, based on what Tim was saying, either consumption as well as reactions, when it's sponsored versus when it's for ourselves.
In the same vein of how partners can directly participate, another question came in that says, asks, where are the branding opportunities other than banner ads or providing expertise for articles?
We have done sponsored content. We have done native advertisements. We do email opportunities. And again, these unbranded to branded links on Facebook. So basically, what we try to do is be a partner to our clients and find out what is it that they're trying to achieve. I can do my best to give an example, again, without going too far into details, but we had a client through our In America, so this kind of ties it all together, but who through our In America data, we help them discover that patients who see a certain type of physician are more likely to get on their product, do well on their product, and stay on their product. So rather than running ads on our site to take them to the branded site where they might stumble across a doctor finder or a specialist finder, we put the specialist finder right on our site in a one field form where people could immediately find that type of specialist. So it's, the more we can partner with clients to understand what it is they're really trying to accomplish, the more we can craft programs to deliver them. So it's worth noting that all of our tech and ad tech and all delivery of everything that HealthUnion does is all done in-house. So we're quite good at creating custom programs. For example, one of the things Olivier mentioned earlier about a branded landing page, we're able to put, scrolling ISI on the page as per the requirements. And there are as many requirements as there are clients. And one of the things we like to kind of chuckle about, given that we came from that side of the table, was that everybody says their legal and regulatory are the most conservative, and they're all right. So we're well aware of the constraints, and we do the best we can to create programs that remain compliant while also driving the desired business outcome.
But I think what we also been known at HealthUnion is because we create such a huge library of content, and we understand how that content is consumed or perceived by the audience that you're trying to reach and those right people at the right time. What we have had, quite frankly, the most success is to recreate the exact same model for you as a partner as what has been made for us. We do it at a condition level, and we try to replicate that model by letting the data tell us what type of content is most likely to be of interest for you as a brand, as a company, in relationship to the patient within that condition. And we literally create programs that connect your brand to that content on a consistent basis, not only on a consistent basis, whereas you pretty much are kind of top of mind when that content is consumed, but we also continuously add more content to these destination hubs or whatever you want to call it, so that we basically replicate the model that has made our success, frankly, of building and sustaining those relationships for the benefits of partners.
Another question that came in, building on that, we talked a lot about media. What is the primary service you offer?
So at HealthUnion, we have 3 services. The one that we have been highly recognized for, and quite frankly, that has been validated the most by third parties, is our media offering. Our media offering has been validated because we do 2 things better than most, probably everyone in the industry, is we deliver higher audience qualification than any or most partners, and basically defined as people at an aggregate level as being diagnosed with a condition, And the second level that has really defined our media product is that people that consume the media on our platforms take actions, go to the doctors, and are more likely to end up on your prescription than if they were not to come. The second level of service that we offer at HealthTeam are insight and market research practice, where we offer 3 types of main services. One is our syndicated large data, which is our in-America data, that for some markets, most of them have longitudinal aspect to it because we have done some of these surveys for a long time. The second one is our engaged digital ethnography data, which the eye chart that Tim showed you on the content consumption and how it relates to passive and active engagement to content, as well as many other elements, social listening being one of them, commenting and so forth is included into it. And the last piece of our market research is to provide custom, we call it our in-focus offering, but we do a lot of custom work. And then finally, we do clinical trial work, primarily recruitment. However, it is not the largest piece of the work that we do. That being said, it is one of the most requested and desired piece of services from our community members and people that come and consume our sites, because they are looking for solution and answer, and they don't necessarily think and see clinical trials as an afterthought, but rather as a potential continuum of care, especially in oncology and in neurodegenerative and genetic conditions. So that is something that we keep working on and where we often work directly with sponsors.
Thank you. Shifting from a partner to a patient perspective, a question came in that says, patient advocacy groups host their own online patient communities, many facilitated by healthcare professionals. Are you competing with them for the same audience? Wouldn't they have more credibility, even if sponsored by a pharma grant?
It's actually an excellent question. So I think it's fair to say that at first when we enter a new condition, we're seen as competitors. And very, very quickly, we are seen as partners. We have many existing, long-lasting relationships with nonprofit organizations. And the reality is our model is extremely different from theirs. We are the only company that creates content daily in order to build and sustain and maintain relationships. Most associations and nonprofit organizations are not in a publishing organization. They have different goals and objectives. And many, many, many times we do partner with them. Many, many times we do share our data with them at a quantitative survey level. Many, many times we actually do content sharing. So, Tim, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so, and it's, again, a great question, but an advocacy group typically is interested in providing patient services like free MRIs and assistive devices or raising money for research, none of which we do. We have been asked sometimes to get more into patient advocacy, but our neutrality and our lack of agenda is part of our value proposition. So we're offering support and content, and again, oftentimes in tandem with or in cooperation with a leading association in some of these communities. Not all, we're not going to overstate it, but it's some. And as Olivier said, sometimes they do view us as competitive, but they shouldn't. And oftentimes once they understand and we do some outreach with them and explaining what we're doing versus what they're doing, they don't.
There's actually 2 questions that came in related to the moderated discussion, so I'm going to kind of collapse them and have you cover up on both. The first one said, can you provide an example of a moderated session? One of the slides showed 175 moderators. Separate from that, somebody asked, how do the moderators handle conversations that turn strongly negative? So I think maybe a little bit about how the moderation works.
So to view in an open way any one of our moderated conversations, just simply go to one of our Facebook pages. Every one of those conversations is moderated. So every post underneath it will be comments from users and almost on a 1-to-1 ratio comment back from one of our moderators. So they're out there in the open. Now we do moderated discussion in closed manner for market research. That's not what I'm talking about. but moderated discussion that are all on our Facebook page and or to a lesser extent on the forums on our sites. So what was the second half of the question? Because I knew I had an answer for it. Remind me of the second half of the question.
How do the moderators handle conversations that turn negative?
Well, our moderators actually take the point of view of a negative comment as an opportunity to convert someone into a delighted community member. We actually have seen at one point some complaints that we were being driven by or controlled by pharma. And as we were, amongst ourselves trying to craft a response, the community actually came to our defense, and the conversation sort of moderated itself. We really, we will respectfully, if someone keeps hitting the same negative point over and over again, we will respectfully ask them to decline or to stop, tell them that their opinion has been noted, but they can't keep making the same point over and over again. When comments turn negative about a product, first of all, rule number one in our moderation is we're not here to dispense medical advice. We offer zero medical advice. But the tone is usually along the lines of, I'm sorry that didn't work for you, but it certainly works for others, and there's no one solution to insert condition here. Not that we have a boilerplate way to approach it. I'm just sort of describing the general approach. So not that we welcome negative commentary, but we certainly don't fear it. And we're almost always able to convert it and bring it back around to the positive. And that's what, we say things like, oh, we moderate and make it just sound so easy. But our community development team has put a ton of time and is, obviously I'm a little biased, but, could be industry leading in terms of their approach to moderation and diffusing potentially negative or touchy situations.
And then I think it's important to add that the 95% of the conversation are currently happening on our Facebook pages. And then probably the first thing we should have said is that we have very strict guidelines and rules. And, think of it as a chart. Everybody that is part of that ecosystem needs to follow those rules, some of which seems almost too simple to be reminded to people. But we have sets of rules and guidelines that need to be followed very, very similarly like you have sets of rules and guidelines if you have a branded Facebook page as a pharma company. The difference with ours is that they are a lot longer because we bring so many more different topics around the conditions. But we have very, very straightforward and to the point community guidelines that cannot be breached. If you're breached, you can no longer be part of it. But frankly, it doesn't happen very often. And we really take huge pride in having moderators. The last piece I want to tell you is we have three types of moderators. We have moderators that are professional counselors that do this usually on a face-to-face basis at a hospital or oncology centers. And they see a huge amount of pride and welcoming the opportunity to work with us because they can impact people differently online. We have people that bring the perspective of the patient and living with the patient so that they can be compassionate and understand one another, which is very, very important as well. And then the last piece of it is that we have a healthy engagement leads who really are the moderator in chief, if you will, and they are here to make sure that the rules are being kept and that we are creating and maintaining a safe environment during which people can actually communicate, get informed, and stay connected. So net of it is that you have anywhere from 7 to 10 moderators for each platform at the current time. So,
in the interest of time, I think this may be our last question. Do you find any challenges with owning a .net domain in terms of credibility among patients?
Absolutely not. We started off with migraine.com, was our first community. Most of the .coms are owned by pharma companies who aren't going to sell them. We tried, and nor are they able to really do anything with them as we've noted. So our second and third communities were multiple sclerosis.net and rheumatoid arthritis.net, and we took a little bit of a risk on that because we weren't sure. So we saw zero difference between a .com and a .net. We always prefer a .com. We have a handful of those. Most of them are .nets. Because of the way that we generate most of our traffic is either through search or through social, where people are clicking and following links. They're not typing in a URL. It just absolutely has not been a problem. Now, what we won't do is .org, .biz, .info, .tv, .co, .us, whatever. So everything we have is either a .com or a .net and the name of the disease. And if it's a two-word disease, there might be a dash in it.
Yeah, and we own a lot more of those .com and .net that we haven't released yet. Right now, we've just shared with you today the 19 we have existing and the 6 we're going to launch next year.
Dan, I'm going to turn over to you since we're 2 o'clock.
Absolutely. Thank you, Cheryl. Great job. I encourage everyone in the audience to contact our experts after the webinar. They really are interested in hearing from you, your thoughts and questions about this topic. So if you still have a question or comment for our panelists, send an email to pr@health-union.com. So we're just about at the end. Olivier, any final thoughts or words of wisdom before we close up?
No, thank you so much, Dan. I think one thing we're extremely proud of is that we left GSK over 8+ years ago, and the idea of building Health Union then is exactly what we're still doing today. And I think we're really, really proud of the fact that we've been able to keep what was once a dream and now is almost kind of a, we're actually doing it every day. It's fairly unique. I think one thing that we also think is really important is that the value proposition of what we do is in building and sustaining relationship with people, and those relationships are the forefront of everything that we do, and the value that those have, as long as they are leveraged in a win-win-win situation, a win for them, for the people, a win for you, the partner, and a win for us at Health Union. We are looking forward to continue to bring some very disruptive and, frankly, positive outcome to the marketplace. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us, and feel free to reach out anytime. We'd love to connect further.
Thanks, Olivier. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this event and have taken away some new insights. I'd like to once again thank our friends at Health Union for partnering with us on such a great event. And I'd also like to encourage you to look for future web seminars by visiting pharmavoice.com. Thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day. The event is now over.